Okay, so now the recording notice is up, and it simply says you've agreed to be recorded and transcribed. So there's nowhere that needs to be accepted. It's just there. But it still doesn't change the share.
Yes, Stephanie, I think if people choose one of the options, either unmute or put on their video, it gives you the option of accepting the recording. I also don't have the share button, but I don't need it myself, but I mean for others.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Sorry, Neil, say that again.
You either can turn on your camera or you can unmute, and that will allow you to accept the recording.
Yeah, that doesn't make any difference to my situation. Oh, I'm really very sorry. So colleagues, I'm just, nobody has an active share button. So we need to change the presenters.
Stephanie, perhaps you could just talk to our slides.
Yeah, I'm just going to start now and talk, and then I hope that soon we'll have things fixed up so that our presenters who wish to show slides can. So again, let me start again and say good morning to everybody. I'm very pleased to see how many people we have with us on this this meeting, and I am going to talk just briefly about the way in which we want to run today's meeting, because it's a little different from what we've done in the past. This topic today is all about supervision, and it's about the support that we have in our institutions for supervisors of postgraduate studies. Just a little bit of background for those members of our audience who may be new to the community of practice. This is a part of a program which is titled Advancing Early Career Researchers and Scholars, and it's hosted by the USAP Universities of South Africa, and we are supported by the Department of Science and Technology and Innovation.
Prof, sorry, there's a bad echo on my side. I don't know if anybody else hears the echo.
Yep, we can hear it.
Dr. Henriette, if you can please mute for us. I think I see you are unmuted. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this better?
Much better.
Okay. Well, thank you. Goodness, gremlins today. Okay, so the Advancing Early Career Researchers and Scholars program has 4 components, which involve 2 online platforms, one a monitoring platform which we are still developing, and then the community of practice for postgraduate education and scholarship. This community of practice has actually been going for nearly 3 years now, and the purpose of it is really to be a forum for sharing best practice. We see ourselves as a kind of a think tank. It gives us an opportunity to lobby for matters which are related to postgraduate education, and also to have this as a national platform for discussion and for connecting the different programs where there are interests in supervision of postgraduate students. It started several years ago now, that we had a big study, a survey of what was needed. And one of the things that we did agree we do need is a sector-wide community of practice, which allows us to share our knowledge from different universities and from different institutions around postgraduate supervision. It's a way of enhancing the supervisory capacity right across the sector as a community to sustain the sector, to provide interaction, and to have seminars and conferences which allow us to look at different aspects of postgraduate supervision. And a lot of that is to do with developing of institutional capacity for academics who can supervise, who have expertise, and to help train people who are new to postgraduate supervision. And of course, today, that is exactly what we are talking about. It is one of the areas that we agreed always needs to be a focus for this community of practice. And today, what we're going to be talking about is the nature of postgraduate studies, what we expect of our students, and how we provide the enabling environment to allow our postgraduate students to make progress. So really, the questions that we're asking today are, what do supervisors need in order to be effective as supervisors of postgraduate students? What do new supervisors need? And what are our institutions providing? So in order to address that today, we actually have 5 speakers from different organizations, and I'll just tell you who they are and then I'll introduce them one at a time in turn. And each of them is going to speak about the interventions or the programs that their universities have in place to support the supervisors of postgraduate studies. And the questions we've asked them are, what are the programs that you have? How are they going? In other words, are there good parts and bad parts? Are there any challenges? How well are they working? And then thirdly, where are the gaps and the needs in the sector? So each of our speakers is going to talk to us for about 10 minutes. And at the end of that, there will be plenty of time for our audience to contribute comment and to ask questions. So I'm going to start. Well, let me just tell you, I'm very, very pleased to have the speakers that we have today. So we have, first of all, Professor Neil Corbinelli, who is the Dean of Research at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Then we have Professor Sotumo Motloang, who is the Director of Postgraduate Studies at Central University of Technology. Then we'll have Dr. Henriette van den Berg, who is the Manager of the Transformation of the Professoriate Mentoring Program. That's a big title, Henriette, at University of the Free State. Then we have Dr. Lorenzo David, who is the Coordinator of Research Capacity Development in the Postgraduate School at University of Johannesburg. And then Dr. Tanya van der Merwe, who is the Postgraduate Specialist in the Center for Learning, Teaching and Development at WITS. So I am going to just hand over now first to Neil, Professor Neil Corbinelli, who is the Dean of Research at UKZN. Neil, over to you.
Prof, before Neil starts, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I've managed to fiddle with the setting. Prof, Neil, could you just check if you're able to share now?
Yes, I've got the share button active now, but I don't need it for my presentation because I just have a few bullet points that I want to run through.
Thank you,
But
it's
active.
working.
Yes, it is active now. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Over to you.
Colleagues. And yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for giving me the opportunity to present today on what we're doing at the University of KwaZulu-Natal to uplift our emerging researchers and enable them to supervise postgraduate students in a manner that doesn't actually put them on the back foot. And we find a lot of times postgraduate students choose to go with more established researchers, and they do this because they feel that if they go with the emerging researchers, they wouldn't get the same sort of supervision they would get if they were to go with an established researcher. So we find a lot of times emerging researchers find it very, very difficult to recruit students into their programs. Apologies in advance, I've got a bit of a flu today. So what we do at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, through our University Capacity Development Grant, we run 4 workshops on postgraduate supervision. And those 4 workshops are run in May, June, July, and September. 3 of those workshops are external to the university. So we take our emerging academics involved in supervision away, and we choose 20 at a time. We take them for a 2-day retreat. And at that retreat, they get a talk by one of our very experienced supervisors, someone who's supervised students before, and not just 1 or 2, but supervised several students before. And the purpose of that presentation that they get at the beginning is to allow them to see what best practice is. And a lot of the times, the feedback that we get from our emerging researchers is we never knew that supervision actually entails this much. And I'm afraid that a lot of emerging researchers think that supervision is just something that they enter into and they make it up as they go along. And there's actually, a science to this and a particular way of doing this. So that presentation at the beginning actually opens their eyes to a lot of things that they never knew in the past. What we also do at that particular workshop is allow them to voice their opinion and their frustrations. And a lot of the frustrations and a lot of the times we hear that they just don't have enough time. And I think that's true not only for emerging researchers, but all academics at tertiary institutions. And part of the workshop is allowing them to fit in time into their schedules and to diarize time for supervision so that they not found lacking, in some instances, as the Dean of Research, in many instances when I have to arbitrate, some students say, I haven't seen my supervisor for 6 months, I haven't seen my supervisor for 3 months, that sort of thing. And they actually, the emerging researchers now learn to pencil in time into their diary, either on a weekly basis, fortnightly basis, quarterly basis, and different sorts of activities, weekly, quarterly, monthly, and that really helps the emerging researchers. So we take them away and the reason why we take them away as well, it allows them to focus on the workshop at hand. And we find a lot of times, and I see a lot of universities doing this, including our own, having online workshop ourselves now. And at these online workshops, we find that the people attending it are multitasking. So they might be listening to me now, looking at their emails, doing something else, and it's really not effective. So we allow them to be taken away, put into a room where they can actually converse and spend time with established researchers. So that actually works very, very well. We've had very good feedback from a lot of the academics that have actually been in this program. The second thing that we do is that we encourage and we ensure that emerging researchers have mentors in their own disciplines. So the managers and the heads of schools and heads of departments try to identify mentors with similar interests to the emerging researchers and to mentor them through the supervision process. And this mentorship is also something that's more formalized because they meet with them on a regular basis and then get insights into what their constraints are. Best practices and tips on supervision are also passed on from the more established to the emerging researchers. And a lot of times we find that the mentors are also co-supervisors of students that they are mentoring the emerging researchers with. So we find a student has 2 supervisors, an established supervisor, and an emerging researcher as well. And we find that the emerging researcher learns a lot from the established researcher because they're in on the weekly meetings, monthly meetings, they're in on meetings where they discuss whether or not the students are on the right track, etc. So we also expect the mentors, and because time has been such an issue for emerging researchers, we expect the mentors to show emerging researchers where they can fit in the time and find the time for supervision. As I said, the other thing that we do encourage is co-supervision. And a lot of the times, as I say, it's very, very difficult for emerging researchers to attract students to join their research groups. So what we do expect is that emerging researchers bring the established researchers bring the emerging researchers into their fold and say, I've got these 2 students and I want you to supervise with me on these 2 projects, and this is going to be your role. And we don't just want, you know, a co-supervisor to come in as an emerging researcher and be a bystander. We want them to actively participate in the supervision program, being given active roles in that particular supervision, and by supervising with a more experienced, more established researcher, they actually learn the art of supervision going on. The other intervention we have at the university is open forums. And we try to have open forums in each of the colleges. Our university has a college model where we have 4 different colleges. And each of those open forums allow the emerging researchers to voice their concerns with regard to supervision of postgraduate students and research in general. As I said, a lot of the problems that emerging researchers face is finding time, but other problems also pop up. For instance, access to instrumentation, especially in the sciences. They also find it difficult if they are on a project with an established researcher to stamp their authority and get their footprint on a particular project, even though and many times they the PI on that particular project. They find it difficult to be seen as a researcher when their name is on a publication with an established researcher. People automatically think, you know, the established researcher has been doing all the work in this. So a lot of good things come out of this forums that we have with emerging researchers. It allows them to voice their opinion. It allows us to document whatever constraints they're facing and for us to look at ways of dealing with it. And the last thing that we are going to institute, we haven't done it yet, but we'd like to run a supervisors forum at the research office for both emerging and established researchers and bring them together at least once or twice a year so that the established researchers can actually mingle with the emerging researchers. We can actually get, you know, short talks about best practice, etc., going on, so they can actually develop a community of practice amongst themselves. So we're looking at setting this up. We haven't done it yet, but we have this on the cards at UKZN. And my last point before I go is that I want to maybe suggest that a forum like this is very, very important, and perhaps we can convert this to a sort of a national conference or a national workshop that's maybe 1 or 2 days away, where we invite maybe 20 to 30 emerging researchers from the different universities who are interested to go away to another location, invite established researchers who have supervised postgraduate students over the years, successfully supervised them, and want to share their best practice with the university community in South Africa. So those are my recommendations and a summary of what we're doing at UKZN in terms of developing emerging researchers. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Neil, for covering a lot of ground. And it's very interesting to hear it all. I think, let me just say for the audience, please do feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat at this stage. I think we'll not take questions now, but we'll have everybody speak, and then we'll have the discussion afterwards. But just let me say, I do hear your suggestion about the need for in-person interactions and the early career colloquium idea or conference idea. I have made a note. So thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is Professor Setumo Motlong, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from him because he is the Director of Postgrad Studies, Research and Innovation at Central University of Technology, and we've not had speakers from CUT before. So Professor, over to you. I'm very much looking forward to hearing your presentation. Situmo, are you able to turn on your microphone and your camera? We might have a problem again.
So from our side, we can see that Prof. Motlung is in the room. He's been made a presenter. He should be able to share. Perhaps he just needs to unmute and put the camera on. Prof, are you in the... I see he is muted. Prof, you are still muted.
Very much. I'm not so sure what was happening.
Well, there we go.
And pressing the camera, I've been pressing the camera.
Prof, if you can put your camera on. Prof?
Gee, I'm very sorry. Prof. Motlung, are you wishing to share slides? Janet, I see that on my screen it shows Prof as spotlighted. I don't know if that makes a difference.
It shouldn't. He is set up as a presenter. So I
think Prof just left the meeting to rejoin. I'm sure he'll be back.
All right. I think we'll move on and we'll go back to Professor Motlung because our audience must be tearing their hair out. Again, apologies. Okay. If we could ask Dr. Henriette van den Berg if she would do her presentation. Henriette, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Let me just quickly share.
Oh, wow, success.
Yes. Please go ahead, Henriette. Thank you very much.
So in a minute, I just want to find the right presentation.
Sorry, Chair. I think I'm now back again. I'm not so sure what is happening because when I'm trying to unmute, just went off and I'm not so sure why.
Okay.
Something like that. So I'm not so sure whether I must proceed or I must just pause.
Prof. Motlung, I think what we'll do is, if you don't mind, Dr. Henriette van den Berg has just put her slides up. We'll come back to you, if that's okay, after this. Thank you. Henriette, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you. I'm talking on behalf of the different centers at UFS who actually take care of our novice supervisors. So firstly, our Center for Graduate Support, who is mainly responsible for supervisor training, do free research supervision weeks per year, where they actually provide training for supervisors, and it's often a combination of experienced and inexperienced supervisors who attend. We bring in external presenters most of the time, but there's also, a mixture of internal and external presenters. Then our vice deans research in the different faculties often supplement the training done by the Center for Graduate Support by presenting workshops. Like, for example, our Economic and Management Sciences last year did an article format thesis supervision workshop, and also general supervision workshops. And then the mentoring program that I am responsible for, we currently have about 170 of our staff members in an ongoing mentoring program. And we target our very early career researchers, those in the process of completing masters and PhDs, but who gradually become involved as co-supervisors. Then we have more advanced early career colleagues who are already independently supervising or co-supervising, and we also have a mid-career group. So in the mentoring program, we try to do at least 3 additional training workshops during the year. But then apart from that, our training is much more a discussion session, opportunities to ask questions, opportunity to brainstorm about the type of problems that our young research supervisors experience. And one way in which we actually also become involved is we have a similar problem in terms of young supervisors recruiting postgraduate students. And because it is quite important for our colleagues at UFS, postgraduate output is considered one of the absolute criteria for promotion to higher levels. For the colleagues, it's quite important to make sure that they have a busy and at least an active group of postgraduate students to supervise. So we actually assist firstly by trying to help them to find collaborators in other departments if they do not have a strong pipeline of postgraduate students in their own department. So they often co-supervise across faculty boundaries, or then, if they have enough in their own departments, we try to help them in terms of planning how to increase their group of postgraduate researchers. These colleagues in the mentoring program also have discipline-specific mentors, some of them internally, some externally, but many of them deal with their specific challenges in postgraduate research in the mentorship relationship that they have with these mentors. Then we also share online resources with colleagues to actually help them to just introduce them to all the resources that are available out there. In terms of collaboration, we assist our colleagues in the mentoring program to register for the doctoral supervision course at CREST. And this year, we're also trying to help them to register for the CoP Higher Education Consortium presentation or training course on research supervision. The university is also a member of Vitae UK, which provide a huge range of resources, training opportunities, and because we are a member, it is for free for our colleagues to attend, but there's lots and lots of specific resources on research supervision. And then we've got an ongoing collaboration with Prof. Gina Whisker, who at least, once a year come out, do workshops for us, but she also creates videos for us on postgraduate supervision. And we've got a range of videos, for example, on how to give feedback, preparing for the examination, but we also introduce our colleagues in the program to her website, Oasis for Learning, that has a specific section on postgraduate supervision. This is just to show you, how for the mentorship colleagues, we are following their number of graduates and the current students that they supervise. So we do this on an annual basis, and we specifically try to intervene where a colleague on the one hand have difficulty to recruit students. Then in terms of the gaps, I think the gaps that we have is often at a policy and an institutional policy level, where we do not have clear guidelines on what the supervision load is supposed to be. at different stages of a researcher's development. So I find that some of our young colleagues in the program are quite overloaded with candidates to supervise. It depends on the novelty of the area in which they supervise. For example, if they're the only one in a certain part of labor law, they might, within a year or two after graduating with their own PhDs, they might have a load of 10 to 12 students to supervise, which places a huge burden on them in terms of their own research work and time for research, as well as the quality of supervision. And also, I do not see a consistent guideline in our different faculties in terms of how much time is allocated for supervision. And because of that, you find that there's huge overload, and very often the difficulties that we encounter has to do with the availability in the schedule of the staff member for time for supervision and meeting regularly. Another issue that I would like to, indicate as a gap. I know Prof. Gina Whisker often talk about guardian supervisors, and this is where you have a more senior person in a faculty or in a department who can step in when problems start to develop in the supervision relationship, either because of a clash of personality or for other reasons. And I think such a guardian supervisor in different schools or in different faculties will go a long way to help us to intervene when colleagues experience difficulties in the supervisory relationship. The discipline-specific mentors, in the case of our mentoring program, play that role. But I think we can actually make sure that it's more consistent and there's greater access to guardian supervisors. In many departments, it happens informally, but I think if we can formalize it in our own institution, we will go a long way to address the issues that colleagues experience. And then, I'm often wondering if there isn't an opportunity for greater collaboration between institutions. I think, for example, here in Central South Africa, between CUT, UFS, and Saul Plaatjes University, where we develop and accredit our own supervision short course, and we get colleagues together to actually, do the training, complete the training, and interact with colleagues across different institutions. There's already a few collaborative relationships where we co-supervise between CUT and UFS, where there's supervision capacity gaps, but I think we can definitely strengthen that. And with that, I think I can conclude.
Henriette, thank you very much. You've raised some very important points there. I have made some notes, but thank you for specifying some gaps. And we will have a few questions, I'm sure, at the end. I certainly do have. But also thank you for raising the issue of collaboration, particularly regional collaboration. So thank you. I hope you'll be prepared to share your slides. You've given us some useful information there. Okay. So thank you. Thank you. Right, now let's go back with, again, apologies, Professor Motlong, if you are able to now open up your camera and your microphone, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think now things are working a little bit better now. Thank you so much. You. And as I've said earlier on before to say, this platform is actually one of the best that we shall be sharing some very important information. However, maybe I must also state the fact that we are the University of Technology, And as you might be aware, and I've heard two previous speakers from UKZN and UFS, and of course those are traditional universities of which I mean they've been in the field for some time, compared to the universities of technology. I think you know the history better than I do. However, let me just share our intervention as far as the supervisors are concerned. Of course, I mean, the first thing that we are also doing is to do the research capacity development via different workshops. And the other thing that we were actually relying on was the Tensor program on supervisor enhancement program. However, I must also state the fact that for this year 2025, I think Tensor doesn't have funding to keep on doing that supervisor enhancement program. As a result, we had to actually focus more on us and do these things internally, the training, most of them. Right now, in terms of the gaps that we have, I mean, as everybody has actually said, I think this one is the national problem, the workload problem. I think most of the supervisors, especially the young ones, they will always be complaining to say, the professors doesn't want to teach the first years. As you know, first years will always have a very big classes. So now professors will always be running away from teaching this undergraduate, but they prefer to go and teach the honors as well as the third year, because I mean the numbers there are a little bit lower. So now all this workload are actually pumped into these young ones who have just started their career as lecturers or as the academics. So that is a gap, and of course, perhaps maybe we shall, in terms of the national, and I think this is not the only problem that we have here at CUT. However, we really need that experience of professors at the first year, so that these young ones who are coming in can also have time to also grow, so that they can one day become full professors. So that's one gap that we have actually realized. Now, in terms of the trainings also, there was a gap as far as CUT is concerned, because I mean, when we offered the supervisor training, our focus was more given in a general platform in terms of how we supervise. However, based on the fact that we are open, and some of the young people actually came to our office to ask to say, how about if you can separate these different categories? For an example, you should have a specific workshop that we will be doing for this year, only specifically for inexperienced supervisors, because I mean, if you put them in the same room, these young ones who are inexperienced, they end up not being able to partake or to contribute in a workshop. So as a result, moving forward from this year, we have separated them, and we are going to have be giving them the inexperienced workshop, which will just be given to them, and experienced supervisor training will also be given, as well as the advice one. And in addition to this one, we will also be workshopping them in terms of the evaluation of postgraduate work or thesis, especially for the inexperienced one. That is also very important as far as we want to improve our system. So now I've heard colleagues from UKZN as well as our neighbors in terms of the mentorship program currently at CUT. We don't have the formalized mentorship program for the experienced supervisors to be co-supervising with these inexperienced supervisors. However, maybe I must also make it a point that, I mean, even if we are looking forward to go that route, most of the universities of technology, I think we are highly incentivized in terms of when you have a master's or a PhD student is going to graduate, you normally get the incentives for that. Even for publications, supervisors are getting the incentives for that. Now, I am afraid that might give us a lot of problem because, for an example, I'm seeing a very established researchers or established supervisors supervising the PhD students alone or a master's alone. And I think the idea there is, I think this issue of incentives is actually giving us some problems. For an example, when I was working at UOFs, I know there was no incentives for such things like that. So I think that is one of the problem, but we will just go back and try to see how we can work around it. Because if you remove the incentives, you might be saying people should not do any supervision anymore. So we are a little bit in a young stage, so we cannot just remove the incentives. But if we keep on giving those incentives, it becomes a problem to us because we are actually shooting ourselves in that's the issue that I wanted to say. Now, in terms of the general comment that I want to put is the issue of the TENSA, the Supervision Enhancement Program. I think perhaps maybe our Department of Higher Education needs to think it otherwise, especially for the University of Technology, to actually return funding for this program because it was very relevant to us. And I mean, I can give a proofs from colleagues who have attended this kind of enhancement program. And the other issue that I think I need to, perhaps the issue of the mentorship, it must be a compulsory because I mean, I'm also feeling that some of these experienced researchers who normally go for retirement, we sometimes retain them because there was no mentorship program. As a result, we need to retain them. They must also be coming here to make sure that their students finishes. But the issue of the mentorship program, I think that issue must be compulsory. I think I would like to pause the chair from CUT. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting to hear these different approaches, isn't it? But I have made a few notes and we will certainly come back to some of those points that you've made there. So, Professor, thank you very much indeed for that contribution. Colleagues, we will move on now, and I'm going to ask Dr. Lorenzo David, who is Coordinator for Research Capacity Development in the Postgrad School at University of Johannesburg. Again, a new visitor to our community of practice, at least a new member, and I'm looking forward very much to hearing from you. So over to you. You're muted at the moment.
Thank you very much, Prof. And good morning, colleagues. I hope you all are well. I'd like to thank you, Prof, for this opportunity. And yeah, I'll just share my screen and hopefully we can just start with the presentation. Put in slide mode. Okay.
Yep.
So
all good.
So once again, thank you everyone for this opportunity. I'd just like to speak from the perspective of the Research Capacity Development Unit. And this is a unit which is located within the postgraduate school, which focuses on equipping from postgraduate students all the way up to postdocs, as well as our academic staff and supervisors as well. So specifically from our point of view, the Research Capacity Development Unit focuses on developing and equipping academics. This includes your support staff, PDRFs, and researchers by offering various forms of training and assistance on their supervision journey. So what we've identified is that in order to achieve this, we have to try and pursue this through different avenues. So the first one is going to be through some of the various workshops that we run, and we'll go through quite briefly in terms of the broad topics. We also have some mini courses and digital resources which supervisors can actually access on their own time, because obviously schedule permitting, it can be a bit difficult for them to always attend the workshops that we run. We try to also plan some seminars as well as some forums and panel discussions to generate conversation around certain key topics or challenges that actually researchers and emerging supervisors are actually finding within the field, and obviously trying to navigate academia as well. So from the RCD, we like to take it from a holistic point of view. So there's holistic support, as well as we quite strong on institutional collaboration. So in terms of the broader RCD workshops, these include everything from writing methodology, the use of AI, now obviously in terms of research, what are some of the ethics and the ethical responsibilities in terms of supervision from the perspective of a supervisor from UJ? How do we effectively communicate? Because what we notice is that the way in which students wish to be, respond to communication has changed if we look from, let's just say, from when I first started my studies. So how can we bridge the gap that exists between, the supervisors and the way in which we, for example, provide feedback, to a way in which the students will respond to it effectively? We also touch on some workshops in terms of mediating conflict and, dealing with these little issues that do crop up with supervision. And we also try to lean quite heavily in terms of wellness, because we do understand that, this is a very high pressure environment for many academics, and in fact, all that's working in the university. So how do we find that work-life balance between, obviously what needs to be done in terms of academia while still being effective in other areas of your life as well? And we also run some workshops in terms of funding opportunities. How do we go about writing these applications, etc.? So what we've noticed is that it has been quite beneficial for us to partner directly with the faculties and departments. And the reason for this is we can come up with a list of workshops, but what we've identified is that each faculty will have their own specific needs. So this occurs primarily through, we keep in contact with the HODs as well as the vice deans of research, and we try to have meetings on a regular basis, as regular as the schedule will permit. And just to kind of identify where are the gaps in your specific faculty within your departments, and then we will put trainings together specifically to target supervisors as well as PDRFs within those faculties themselves. Now, these can range from everything from orientation sessions to faculty-specific workshops, like we've said, and these will be based on specific requests. And something that we also try to do is institutional benchmarking events as well as workshops. So we do believe that obviously in the academic space in South Africa, it is quite small. So we can learn from each other, we can assist each other, as well as looking outside of South Africa. So one of the meetings that we've had recently at some workshops actually dealt with a presenter, Dr. Callaghan from La Trobe University. And we feel it's good to get an international perspective as well as a South African perspective, so that our approach is well-rounded, especially in terms of what we are offering our supervisors as well. So I'm just going to quickly go through some of the workshops that we run, and these are just broad themes that we're going to be focusing on. So they will be orientation sessions that happen towards the beginning of the year, and obviously these are targeted more towards our emerging academics, because they may not be fully aware of what UJ offers them in terms of their support. Then we'll go on to other types of workshops, including planning. How do you effectively manage your time, writing the proposal process, going through the proposal process. And then we focus on supervision methods, directing the data production phase, as well as finalization and submission phase, because we do understand that while we are tasked with obviously mentoring the students, there's also administrative tasks that are associated with that as well. So coming in, speaking from my personal capacity as an emerging academic, these processes are not always clear at the outset. So what we like to do is get some experienced academics in who will guide the emerging academics through this process and provide a bit of an overview and, a guideline in the do's and don'ts to navigating this area. We also have some general workshops that we like to focus on, and these will include everything from professional etiquette, which will be, maintaining boundaries between your students. How do you go about effectively communicating with them if you're having certain issues, which, like we said, commonly arise? How do we go about navigating these and obviously coming to solutions? Then we'll touch on funding, wellness, as well as in terms of professional development. Now, the professional development that we speak of here targets more specifically the postdocs, because we do understand that not all of the postdocs will actually go into academia. Some will want to go into industry. So just providing a bit of overview in what are some of the potentials in terms of career trajectory and getting some people from industry as well as academia to speak and provide a bit more information to emerging academics and the postdocs as well. So something that the RCD unit is actually very happy about is our supervisor enrichment orientation. And this happens on a yearly basis. And what we try to do here is get a group of emerging academics to come in and, we will discuss certain, so there'll be a theme for that particular orientation. But it's essentially for them to learn from the more established academics in terms of how do we navigate this new area, as well as providing them with some key tools and tips in terms of, supervisory processes, shall we say, or in terms of the admin associated with it. So I'd just like to quickly end on, what we've identified that is working and what still needs attention. So from the perspective of, the unit that I work at, we have seen success in structuring training and orientation tailored to both our early career as well as our experienced supervisors. What we understand is that our approach can't be obviously a blanket approach because the needs of both of these groups are going to be very different. So we try to develop workshops targeted to specific groups and obviously find facilitators who are experienced in that particular area. We have also put together like a centralized digital platform, basically to improve access to resources. And we have an active online community forums, as well as try and be active on social media, just to bring awareness in terms of what are some of the trainings that our unit is actually offering within the University of Johannesburg. We have noticed, and I think I've mentioned this previously, in terms of departmental and faculty collaboration, and we see that this actually fosters local relevance. So we are trying to put together workshops that are of particular interest to, let's just say, academics from a particular faculty, and we have noticed that the turnout for these types of workshops is much higher. In terms of some of the needs that we've identified, we see that the participation of academics is inconsistent. And a reason for this, or I could possibly say, is due to scheduling concerns. We do understand that academics have a very busy schedule in terms of teaching, supervising, and everything else that's related. So this is something that we are trying to find some solutions with, and we are actually in talks with the HODs as well as vice deans to see how we can best navigate these issues. Then we also identify that we can't bring about consistent change with obviously a short workshop. So we've identified that there is a need for follow-up mentoring, and this goes beyond the orientation sessions that we host. So ongoing training, we have noticed, will actually obviously bring about better results. And the major need that I actually would like to speak about would be in terms of digital literacy, specifically in terms of AI. So what we've noticed is that many of the students, and I think we all will be aware, are very well versed in using AI. But what we've noticed is that many academics, there's a lot for us to learn. So what we're hoping to do is bring some awareness and bring some training in this specific area, because currently what it's seen as is AI. How do we stop students from using AI to, let's just say, submit work that's not their own? But if we look at the other end of it, we see that AI is actually a very powerful tool that can be used even in terms of like literature searching, shall we say, identifying gaps in particular outlines. So we want to bring some awareness in terms of AI and other technologies to assist, especially in the space of remote supervision, because we see that seems to be a growing area, especially from our perspective and our experience as well. So with that, I'd just like to say thank you, and I'll hand over back to you, Prof. Burton. Thank you.
Thank you so much for a very comprehensive presentation. And again, I know that there will be some questions, but you've given us a very good view and a very impressive set of interventions that you have there. And thank you very much for those comments at the end about the gaps, which we will come back to. Colleagues, now we have Dr. Tanya van der Merwe, who is from Wits University, a postgraduate specialist. And I want to say a very special thank you to Tanya, because up until about half an hour before we started this seminar, we thought that Tanya would not be able to join us, and she had sent me her notes, which I was just going to show you, just so that we could get the perspective from the Wits University angle. But Tanya is on the call, and she is able to talk to us about what Wits have as interventions. So I'm going to ask her to do it. I think she's just going to show a PDF, because neither of us knew that she would need a slide presentation until the last moment. I think Lorenzo, if I could just ask you to stop sharing your screen.
Prof. Burton, I had the same problem that you had earlier, and that is my share button is not active. So
Not
it's
active.
not possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to look for you quickly.
Okay,
I'm going to
great.
look for you quickly and change that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. No, thank you so much for accommodating me at the last minute. It was hither and thither. But I'm really delighted to be part of this conversation this morning. We really do need, we need a community of practice in supervision that goes beyond the borders of our institutions. But I'm going to start talking, and once that toggle becomes active, I'll just I'm going to look sideways because I've been working on it.
Can you check now?
Oh, awesome! Great. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay.
Speedy. That was great. Okay. So thank you. So I think the important thing, just to because I'm not going to bore you with too much detail, but I think a brief So what I need to say is that I'm also talking on behalf of several pockets of supervision education, and I'll state them shortly. But the other thing that I need to state is that there's a very specific context to the state of supervision that led to the post that I that I hold since last year in April, and that was that there was a in-depth investigation summoned by our DVC academic in 2023 on the state of supervision at Wits, and that investigation was done by Professor Liz Brenner, who did an in-depth examination of what is going on, across faculties in terms of supervision and supervision education on campus. And based on that, the post was created at CLTD in the office that I hold. So that is important context. And then you'll see that my why am I having problems with my there's truly gremlins in the system. I'm sorry, my screen is just randomly disappearing. Okay, there we go. So I think the other important thing to keep in mind is that there's direct and indirect support to supervisors, and we know that postgraduate education really have two broad pillars, and that is the one, of course, we know is supervision, but the other one is also the research education of students. So you'll see that there are snippets of indirect support to supervisors, because the one thing that really breaks the back of supervisors, besides the very sophisticated and indeed scientific process of supervision, is to have to do all of the education about research for students, and that is what some of the things that Wits is trying to address as well. So broadly, there are lots of pockets of, very much as many of our co-speakers have pointed out, pockets of supervision education across faculties, not in everyone, but in most of them. And they, for example, I'm just going to use a few examples, like Faculty of Health Sciences. They have many courses, which varies from 1 to 3 days or in morning on supervision education. And it could include examining thesis. There's a 4-week hybrid course on postgrad supervision, but they also have research methodology courses for students that in turn also support our supervisors. For example, a compulsory methodology course for all PhD students with really good data supporting pressure that's been taken off, from our supervisors, but also a little bit better throughput from our students as well. So there are several examples. Let's take one from Faculty of Humanities. They have 4 PhD weekends per year, which really try to emulate the cohort supervision model. That is a very important focus based on the study that was done on the state of supervision for WITS, and that is that we really have to make a concerted effort of transitioning from the master apprentice supervision model to a cohort supervision model. Where there's a collectivity, where students can learn from each other. I mean, the literature is overwhelmingly supportive of that. And Sue McKenna just pointed out very ironically the other day is that while most universities have already made the so-called global North universities have made that transition long time ago to cohort supervision models. It is particularly universities or countries that were previously colonized that wickedly stick to the one-on-one supervision model. So, but that is a very big focus for WITS, and we see here that the Faculty of Commerce also have really great 3 strategic aims that they have good data on. They've decided to stratify postgraduate student orientation and induction, early writing interventions for students, a very crucial element, which are driven by the Writing Centre at their faculty, and then also enhancing knowledge about post-grad research methods, both for students and for supervisors. Right, and then a program that we're very much excited about is that the Office of Research and Postgraduate Development just launched this year a pilot program called the WITS Doctoral Academy, which is a structured postgraduate program for PhD students. They took in 100 PhD students and their supervisors, and this program is going to run for 3 years. And part of the program is also having a module on getting the supervisors and the students together about talking on negotiating the supervisory relationship. And part of the outcome for that module is that there's not only a supervisory contract, as most universities have, but also a social contract. So we've really found that supervisory relationships is actually really key, in establishing a successful throughput for our students and a successful experience for our supervisors as well. Then for the Centre for Learning and Development, well, that's the Centre for Teaching, Learning, Development, apologies. That's where I'm at, and we are working on a strategic postgraduate supervision education learning framework that is scaffolded from the, for our not only for our novice supervisors but also for our more experienced supervisors. So we've got 3 modules as part of that. To offer introduction, to for an overview rather to supervision, and then establish for more proficient supervisors, establish a learning opportunity for supervision as scholarship. We also offer short half-day workshops, a few times actually a year, that include overview of postgraduate supervision and feedback, and principles and practices of implementing a cohort supervision. And we really get very good feedback and a call for even making these offerings more available than the current ratio. We also collaborate with Humanities on a PGDIP. It's fully online higher education, and we are working on the approval for 3 10-credit electives on postgraduate supervision that will be part of this PGDIP, but also could be standalone. And our prospectus, of course, at CLTD also have many offerings that include grant application. We have a very successful collaboration with CARTA, the Consortium for Advanced Research Training. They have an advanced structured curriculum for PhD students, and with excellent results, really great throughput to our PhD students, finish on time. And they have free curricula on their website. It's a really wonderful resource, and I'll encourage everybody to visit it. They've got extensive curricula, including Train the Trainer in supervision. So the effectivity of these programs, of course, varies like it would But we do have snippets. It's faculty bound, and we do have snippets of of really good feedback on the efficacy of research methodology, both for students and for supervisors. We are anticipating positive results for the Structured WITS Doctoral Academy. But we have problems, of course, the staff really slow to adopt the cohort model supervision. And I just made a comment there just to keep in mind. There's something that jumped out the other day that I found really interesting, is that the expected number of years for our students. I mean, we are one of 4 or 5 countries that expect our PhD students to actually finish in the traditional N or N+2, because the norm worldwide is actually 5 years. So the gaps, and with that, probably also a little bit of suggestions, is that we really need to advocate for the adopting, a cohort supervision model, but to be careful not to frame the adoption of such a module as a binary. It's not a binary. There's actually lots of room for being elective in one's approaches. For example, the one-on-one model is very effective with the construction of a research proposal, but then when one has lots of students, or when there's many students, concentrated students in a department, so there's many variations of the cohort supervision model. We've also found that it'll really be important to standardize promotion criteria, because as much as there's a policy for promotion criteria, it varies in its interpretation across faculties. And there is, as one of our speakers also pointed out, the incentive of promotion for having lots of numbers of students, but without the evidence of throughput and of the quality experience of quality supervision from our students. So to rather, standardize that promotion criteria where there's lots of emphasis placed on the throughput of our students, and as well as the quality supervision being given. And then also to align that promotion criteria perhaps with something like the criteria for a VC award for best supervisor. And on that note, there's lots of research. I'm also submitting a protocol now, is to look at the what are the best practices of our VC awardees, for example, and the throughput of those students, and what do they have in common in terms of best practice and supervision. Also to incentivize quality supervision and humanizing pedagogy. I think there's a lot to be said to push back against a very strong neoliberalist discourse that we are all fighting in higher education, but to really remind our supervisors about the original agenda of transformation, in higher education. And I really love this reading about supervision as praxis and a transformative praxis at that. Implementing structured PhD and postgraduate courses takes a lot of burden off our supervisors, and of course for our supervisors to be a community of practice. So in the workshops that we did with the WITS Doctoral Academy, where we had our supervisors separate first in many discussions, and then the students separate, and then we put them together. But time and time again, with all of these workshops, we really heard our supervisors saying, gosh, can we just have a place where we all can get together and where we can exchange expertise. And that's that. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Tanya, for stepping up at short notice and for your very comprehensive coverage. Okay, so this is a time when we can now have some discussion. I do want to just make a couple of points before we do that. One of them, Janet has put in the chat, something that I would like to just reiterate, because it's part of our program, part of our advanced early careers program, is the TUSO resources platform, which we run as a free open online platform where we can share resources for early career researchers. And if any of the materials that anybody has available, the speakers, but also our audience, where you would be prepared to share that on the TUSO Resources platform, we would really appreciate that. And since that is always intended to be a collaborative platform, may I suggest that you take a look at it, and if you can make contributions to it, please contact Nompa Molelo or Mpumi, who will help you with that. So just to point that comment out. And then I also wanted to just note Leandra Jordan's comment that if we used AI more effectively, perhaps we could reduce our admin burden. And maybe people would like to make some comments about that in a moment as well. Colleagues, just looking at, or just taking a quick look at the notes that I have made during the course of this, there are one or two clear themes that have come up. One of them, of course, being the issue of the workload that academics feel and the balance between time spent with supervision and time spent doing other activities in the academic life. Another one on, I think an important one, and maybe one we should be having another discussion about another time, is the issue of criteria for performance and for promotion and how we relate that to postgraduate supervision and expectations of postgraduate supervision, not the least of which Tanya mentioned just now about the expectation we have of students finishing a PhD in a shorter time than is in fact the international norm. I think the other things that have come up, excuse me, have been collaboration between institutions, particularly Henriette pointed out, regional collaboration between universities that are close by. And we do, of course, have several clusters like that. Also, the need for policies and taking a look at what the policies are around, for example, expectation of supervisors and accreditation of courses that supervisors undertake. I think we also had some important notes from Setumo about the workload problem, and also the differentiation of training for supervisors at different levels, differentiating between novice and experienced and advanced supervisors, and then particular skills, which, for example, how to evaluate a PhD thesis, which are not things that necessarily just come naturally to a new supervisor. And then also the mention that has been there of having an international perspective on how we supervise, because of course our postgraduate degrees are recognized internationally. The issue of digital literacy for supervisors as well as for students, and the issues or the trends around the styles of models of supervision, and the fact that we, as Tanya pointed out, are not actually in the same league as some of the other institutions in the world in terms of models for supervision, and in particular cohort supervision, which we've talked about a lot, but I think perhaps we should be focusing a little bit more on that. Okay, I'm going to open this up now, so please do feel free. I'm hoping that this system will let me see when people put up a hand, and I'm assuming that that's what happens in this system. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question, please do put up your hand or switch on your camera, and I think I will see you in that event. So I would welcome your comments now. So please do go ahead, put up your hand, your electronic hand, and or indicate what you'd like, that you would like to speak. And I see already one. Thank you. This is not a name I know. Matlakala and Sapi, please go ahead. Matlakala? There we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Burton. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers as well for all the valuable comments and the insights and the experiences shared as well. I've also made a number of notes. So I have some comments and I suppose some questions as well, if I may. Let me just put my hand down. So with regards to, I think the first speaker, I speak under correction, I think it was Prof. Neil. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your surname.
Corbinelli, yes, Neil. Neil will answer
Yes.
to Neil.
Okay, you spoke about having a clear outline of the supervisory responsibility when you are perhaps the novice or the more emerging researcher, maybe working alongside a more established researcher. And what I have found to be a challenge when approaching established researchers for, co-supervisory opportunities is that oftentimes you as the more novice researcher ends up taking the bulk, if not all, the supervisory responsibility, because oftentimes, I guess the approach, or maybe the opinion, maybe if I can put it that way, is that you need more than they need you, because oftentimes you will have that that professor on your, let's say, grant application or whatever it is, and their name kind of helps strengthen your application by virtue of their reputation. So sometimes it feels as if they are doing you a favor, and the least you can do is do the bulk of the work. Which I think is kind of reinforced by the fact that so many, and this is not all, of course, will not often be available for even that occasional meeting, with you or the student. So you do end up, in my experience, taking up the bulk of the work. So I'm not sure what is the approach in such instances where you do want to get that supervisory collaborative experience with more established researchers. And is there a way, I guess maybe, I don't want to say formalize, have a formal agreement on paper that makes it now uncomfortable in a sense, in terms of, I will do this, you will do that. But maybe somebody who can have a more, I don't know, maybe make the situation a bit more manageable in that sense. And then perhaps as a second follow-up to that question, yes, we have many established researchers that we'd love to work with, but oftentimes you might find that those researchers are not either available or they're not as approachable. Is there maybe a way to, I don't know, maybe as a suggestion to have somebody who can mediate, be somebody who, for example, says, Prof. Neil, I've identified this colleague in this department whose research aligns with what you are doing. As part of your, I guess, I don't want to say responsibility, maybe a package that they can incentivize Prof. Neil somewhat with, to say, can you mentor this individual? They align with your, your research focus, or they're doing a branch of it, etc., etc. So that maybe it also feels like there's a value proposition for them as well. But I think oftentimes you need a third person to come in there and, have that table, facilitate the discussion when those researchers, the established ones, are not approachable or available to you. I'm not sure if I should allow Prof. Neil to first answer and then maybe ask my other questions. Maybe just give everything at once and then come back. Would that be easier?
Well, perhaps, Neil, I'm sure you've taken notes of that question. Matlakala, if you have a second one, yes, ask it, and then we'll give the floor to speak.
All right. Thank you so much. Maybe these are.
If you could just be short. Yeah.
Okay, it's more comments than questions then, I suppose. Another one of the presenters spoke about having tailored research supervision support. And yes, that's something that I would definitely put my hand up for, because I feel that, yes, different faculties have different research focuses, and oftentimes even the methodology is so different. And we often have this very umbrella approach to research supervision and research methodology and supervision styles, etc. So I definitely would champion that type of strategy. And then with regards to the promotion criteria possibly being standardized, I think a presenter from VETS maybe mentioned that. I'm just not sure how feasible that would be. For example, in our faculty, in the Faculty of Health Sciences, right, we only have 2 academic departments. The rest are purely clinical. So our workload is completely different and what we do is completely different. So I think that would be a bit challenging in a sense. And then the last comment that I had was with regards to the possible Vice Chancellor Award. I definitely agree that there needs to be some incentive for those who choose to supervise or take on supervision, because it is a huge responsibility. I'm not sure necessarily in terms of an award, how that could be tailored in a manner that's fair. Just thinking about, different resources, different funding, different overall impact, I suppose, to date in terms of your own reputation as a researcher. How would one have something like that? But now we are judging everyone on the same level. Would that not, at the end of the day, not create a great environment, I think, because now why that person and not me? You know what I mean? That kind of situation. So I definitely agree, an incentive, a recognition, acknowledgement of some sense beyond just graduation needs to be put in place to incentivize more so emerging and novice researchers to take on that responsibility. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. And Neil, would you like to respond?
Sure. Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks, Speaker, for the question. I think the first one is that we need to realize that when we have established researchers together with novice researchers or emerging researchers co-supervising a student, they're not there to share the workloads. So the established researcher has a very defined role in the process, and that role is merely to provide guidance to both the student and the emerging researcher. So the work should be done by the emerging researcher in terms of supervision. The established researcher from time to time reviews the results, sits together with the emerging researcher and the student and tells them exactly what needs to be done, etc., more of an advisory role. And I think that needs to be outlined, right at the start. The established researcher is not coming in to take some of the burden off the emerging researcher. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that, a lot of times we hear in the different disciplines that none of our professors are approachable. And I don't get on with anyone in my department, So in those cases, we also let our emerging researchers know that co-supervision and mentorship doesn't need to happen in your department or in your college or in your university. If you feel very comfortable with a professor at the University of the Free State, you're more than welcome to co-supervise a student with that particular professor. As I said, not to share the workload, but to be of an advisory nature to that particular emerging researcher. So I think we need to get communities of practice where we go outside, and I heard the term today, outside the borders of our institutions, which I quite like, because sometimes we look at our institutions as having borders. And I think we need to go beyond our own institutions and look at the various role players in my discipline, in my field, whom I feel comfortable with, whom I met at a conference and I got on with like a house on fire. And I'm going to now maybe ask him to co-supervise a student with me because I can learn from there. So I think we need to look at those types of things. And just a last comment, I hear a lot about incentives. And I think that's the buzzword in today's market, today's university. Everything we do, we want an incentive for. We want to know, what am I getting out of this? And I think we need to get away from that line of thought. And I think we need to recognize that we're all academics, we're all in the same boat, and that we need to do things sometimes for academic citizenship. As a professor, I would like to mentor young academics. I would like to grow the young cohort of academics, because when I retire in 10 years' time, I know who's going to take after me. And I would like to think that my positive influence on the future of academia in South Africa has made a difference. So I just want to guard against that, trying to put incentives for everything that we do. Sometimes it might not be a good strategy to have. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, and thank you particularly for that comment about academic citizenship. I personally couldn't agree more. So thank you. I'll take another question. Could I just ask any of the speakers who make questions just to say where you're from and of course who you'd like to direct your question or your comment to. So Takatso Semenya, if you would like to ask or make your comment.
Thank you very much, Prof. Burton. My name is Takatso Semenya. I'm from the University of Pretoria. I've got two comments. One which is not necessarily targeted at Dr. Tanya van der Merwe, but it came up while she was speaking. That I think the approach that they're taking at Wits, or how she presented the work that they're doing at Wits, is very interesting because it shows quite a holistic look at supervision across the university. And it just brought the thought to me that, we've been focusing quite a lot at looking at supervision from an individual competency level. And it would really be good to start looking at supervision from an institutional competency level, or even a faculty level. That as institutions or as a faculty, you develop a competency for supervision. And it would fit in quite nicely, I think, with the cohort-based model of supervision. And the work that, how she presented from the teaching side, from the research side, from the faculty side, what they're doing, and bringing those together. It would be quite a good integrated approach that universities need to take. And bringing in as well the people outside of the university. I think it was Prof. Motlong who talked about TENSA, looking at such an association who can bring in competencies into the universities. In some of the work that we've done at UP through the University Staff Doctoral Program, one of the phases was run with TENSA, and they had quite a very good completion rate for the PhD cohort that they were running. So I think it is some of those structures are good to consider and look at how they're doing it. And now also the second point that I would want to make is with the point that Dr. van den Berg from UFS made on the VTE framework that they use, particularly because we've also been trying to look at the VTE framework in terms of research and development as a framework. And it is quite a good framework, but I just wanted to say that from a South African perspective, and I know that UNISA has been doing some work in terms of contextualizing some of what is coming through as researcher competencies to the South African context, and trying to say that we could look at adding a layer of supervision competency to such frameworks and come up with a supervision framework that would work for South African context in particular. Those are my 2 points. Thank you very much. And yeah, it has been very good presentations. Thank you to all the presenters.
Mr. Katso. Tanya, would you like to respond?
Sure, Stephanie, thank you. Thank you. That's a very good, important comment. I mean, and it goes back to what Neil said the previous time, is that we should be really careful about incentives. And I totally agree with that, especially because it plays so much into converting something as supervision, into a market value, which is a total neoliberalist and a very eroding discourse. But what I mean by incentives, now coming back to your question, is the old argument, right, about, we all academics straddle 3 tiers, right, and that is learning and teaching, research, and academic citizenship. Those are the universal tiers that are considered, for probation, promotion, and so on. But then again, the question is like, which tier is more important, because you can't do all of it all at once. And very often the research tier, is the one that gets the most recognition and often less so than the learning and teaching tier, although I know that UFS, for example, has made that shift a while ago in giving, starting to give excellence in learning and teaching equal recognition. But the point is, we need to probably think about where does supervision lie, and while it's on the one hand a pedagogy, it's on the other hand the competency of supervision. It actually straddles the apex between research and supervision, and if we can think about how could we recognize excellent supervision, you know, for example, this is where I'll stop, is that one of the ideas that in the strategic framework of education is to say, well, if you've got enough micro-credentials that you've accrued, you know, in your supervision education and, you know, and evidence for quality supervision, then you can register as a principal supervision at the university. And that is a very big nod and a very emphatic one to recognizing excellence in supervision. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if any of the other speakers would like to respond to any of those comments.
Stephanie, yes, may I respond regarding the VTI
Henriette,
framework?
please do go ahead. Yeah.
Just explain how we actually use it. In general, the process of capacity development, we focus on the competency or the intentional change model that actually, you know, look for all of these candidates in the program of where they are actually, you know, going to, where they would like to be in terms of their research and academic careers. But we use the VTI framework to understand what is the range of capabilities that they need to develop over this period of time and at different levels of their professional development. So yes, in many respects, we use the VTI framework as a broad guideline, but it's very specific to the discipline of the colleague as well as the context in which they actually operate. But we did find that, you know, the comprehensive nature of the VTI framework helps to provide different lenses, say, for example, for colleagues going more into the commercialization of research, more a research leadership role. So in that way, we use the VTI framework.
Anybody else like to make a comment? I see there's a quite an extensive one being put in the chat by Emmanuel Ojo talking about an article which our new minister wrote at some stage. I don't know, Emmanuel, if you'd like to speak about that.
Thanks, Professor Burton. I think the comment I've actually made here is basically for us to understand that the context in which we work in South Africa cannot be business as usual because we have very critical problems that we are dealing with. And the new minister had already pointed us in this particular article, which I will encourage all of us to read. And while we're having this conversation, a lot of issues are going through my mind in terms of the challenges we have in our siloed institutions. But at the same time, it's important that we understand that the kind of students we're also attracting to higher education are very different. I was just typing that comment out now, but since you called me, I will speak to it. Pre-pandemic, we were assured of students who were not too digital natives, who were still eager to read in black and white. They will sit in the libraries. They will go see a librarian. They will ask for help. But post-pandemic, a lot has changed. Everything has gone digital. To compound this is the whole era of artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the need for us to talk about ethical use of AI, responsible use of AI, academic integrity, and issues around postgraduate assessment. So one of the things I think we should also be thinking about is the fact that the clientele, in quote, of the people we're dealing with, especially our postgraduate students, are very different. Digital natives, short attention span, mental health issues is very prevalent, extremely very prevalent. Most times it's very subtle. And at the same time, they don't really see the PhD as building competencies and practice. They see the PhD as a qualification. They want to be called Dr. This, Dr. That, and all that. So they are not necessarily eager. They are not, so if you are not very careful, while we are looking at the institutional imperatives and all that is happening in our differentiated higher education institutions, I think it's important for us to understand that more and more, the pathway to the professorate in South Africa needs critical and careful interrogation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you make a very good point about how our students regard the PhD and how they see it in terms of what it's going to lead them into and indeed whether or not they're doing the PhD because they want to be academics or they're doing the PhD because that's their route to a different position, perhaps a different job. And it's a very important distinction, and of course compounded by the fact that jobs for doctoral graduates are not as easy as they were. And when one talks in international circles, the purpose of a doctoral degree is seen in a very different context in some cases. And if you take a look at my own comment, if you take a look at the way in which a PhD is valued or considered in our context, in a national context here, and also the way in which students look at where they're going to go with this. In order to get to be enrolled for a PhD in some areas of Europe, for example, is a competitive process. So we heard comments today from our speakers about the difficulties that our early career academics have in recruiting students and how it's difficult for us to find the right students to come into our doctoral programs. In places in Europe and the United States, it's a competition to get a place to be a PhD student. So there's a very different context that we have from some other countries. And of course, the way in which we expect students to enroll, to finish their doctoral degrees early, to in some cases convert from a master's to a PhD and still finish in 4 years. So we have high expectations, and they certainly are not necessarily the same as the other international situations. And I think we need also to bear that in mind. So when it comes to our supervisors, they also are in a quite demanding context. So I think that's something we need to see. And I'm very pleased to see that Dr. Manamela is addressing some of these contexts already. I don't see any other questions or comments. Janet?
Hi, Prof. I'm just wondering, I did have to step out, but I'm wondering if the comment from Trishana Sony, it's in the Q&A chat, about how do we expand the available examiner network? Can we set up a list of academics who are willing to be examiners and their subject area and expertise? Is there such a list? I'm not sure if this was spotted.
Wasn't. Thank you.
And she's from VET.
Okay, I don't have access to the Q&A, so perhaps you could...
it's just that one, yeah.
Okay. Whether we have a list of... Sorry, Janet, would you mind just reading it again?
Yes, sure.
Because I can't see it.
How do we expand the available examiner network? Can we set up a list of academics who are willing to be examiners with their subject area expertise? Is there such a list? And that's from Trishana Soni.
Okay, thank you. I'm pretty sure that, well, if there is one, I'm not aware of it. And I think I know most of the networks that we have, unless anybody else knows. It would probably be a good idea, but let us just remember that the appointment as an examiner for a PhD is in fact a process which is an official, usually Senate approved or faculty approved process. So if one was seeking examiners, they would still have to go through the process of being approved and appointed within the faculty processes and sometimes the Senate process as well. So it would certainly be useful to look at a list of people prepared to do that, but there would still have to be the following of the official channels because the supervisors are officially appointed by the universities. Yeah. Thank you. And then I see Chris Isiki has just made a comment aligning with Professor Ojo's comments and adding that there is a craze for increased numbers which doesn't match the current supervision capacity. Yes, too many doctoral candidates and too few supervisors, indeed. Yeah. So I have also made Neil's comment about we always look out for potential examiners when we are in things like conferences. The source of examiners, of course, is something which is a challenge. And in fact, just an added comment to that, Neil, and also the others, you know, being an examiner is also something of a skill. It's something that we ought to be training our supervisors to do, because assessing a postgraduate thesis or dissertation is something that we don't have training for very often. In fact, quite soon I've been asked to consider a workshop on exactly that. So I think it's something we need to add to our list of issues that we need to consider in the whole context of postgraduate supervision. So I'm making some more notes. Good. Colleagues, I don't see any other hands or questions. I think we've had a very wide-ranging and interesting discussion. And I see Tanya's put a comment in the chat about the awards and rewards and recognition of supervision. Again, something we should perhaps have a more detailed discussion about at some stage. It certainly is a challenge. And as she says quite correctly at the bottom of that comment, the challenge because in faculties we do, as academics, insist on academic freedom and some autonomy, which is entirely appropriate. Right, colleagues, thank you very much indeed for all of those comments and your contributions. I think we will make a report out of this, as we always do from these COP meetings, and they will come in the form of minutes for the next meeting. I'd like to thank you all very much indeed for your patience with our technical hitches at the beginning of this session. Doesn't usually happen like that, but it certainly wasn't a great experience for those of us organizing this today. We hope we won't have that again next time. So let me say thank you all of you for attending. Thank you for your interest and for your participation. We will look forward next time to our next meeting. And one last comment, if any of our audience have, apart from the comments that have been made today or suggestions that have been made today, if you have suggestions as to what you would like us to have as topics for the community of practice meetings, you are very welcome to let us know. Feel free to drop us a line, myself or Janet or any of the others who are organizing the program. Please do feel free to let us know if you have a particular topic that you would like us to focus on in any of our next meetings. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your attention and thank you for your contributions. And thank you once again, particularly, thank you very much to our speakers, all of whom have given us some very, very valuable food for thought. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
and have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.